Hi, it's Sarah. Welcome to episode 2 of my new YouTube channel. We're going to leave knitting for a little bit. Today we're going to talk about counted cross stitch, which is another craft that I do. I thought it would be fun to show you one of my very first stitches. Now this is not counted cross stitch. This is more embroidery or crewel. Isn't that fun? It's an Indian paintbrush, and I picked it up at some sort of a street market when I was very young. I was probably about 9 or 10, and some of it is coming apart with age, and my stitching is just, oh my goodness, look at that. But it has stood the test of time. I've used this as a pin cushion over the years, found it in one of my sewing baskets, and I still love it. Here's a few pins. I still love it. So never underestimate the stitching prowess of a child. But let me show you some more of my recent stitches. This I am proud to say was in the Just Cross Stitch ornament issue, Christmas ornament issue. And it's actually beaded. You can see the beads standing up. I trimmed it with beads, and I put beads in this cording. I made my own cording with some of the beads wrapped around with some other. I guess what I did was I took some existing cording and I sort of braided the beads in there. But it's a flat finish. I thought that it was darling without the beads. The magazine wanted the beads in there, so I was happy to put them in. But yeah. So this, if you can get a hold of the Christmas ornament issue, you can stitch this. It'll be on my site eventually. I thought I might do some kind of a booklet with Christmas ornaments, and this is a fun one. A little Christmas ball with a bow. Now, speaking of Just Cross Stitch magazine, I also had another little contribution. This was in the autumn issue. I'm not sure what they called it, fall 2023. But this is just a little thankful little tree with some little acorns. And what I did to make this was I sewed it all together, and then I slit, you know, to turn it right side out, and put some cross stitches and a little piece of fabric and a button. Not my way of doing things. I see a lot of people making little pillows this way. I didn't really like it. This one, sort of a prototype, I just put the buttons there, but and whoops, dropped it. Oh, sorry. This one is the same, just different colors. And I kind of liked the aqua of this one, so this was the one that I sent them. But yeah, it's not, this sort of a back is not my favorite, and I don't think I'll do it again. What I much prefer is just a regular, well, here's an envelope finish. I like envelope finishes. So what you can do is take one cover and you can put it on a little pre-made pillow, and then you can change them. You can just take this off, pop another one on, and you've got one pillow form with lots and lots of covers. And I kind of like that way of doing it. That's how I do my bigger pillows. But this one I don't think I've published yet. It's just a fun little fun little alphabet with some little motifs in there. Nice spring colors. I gave this to my mother, and she had it with her during her last illness, her last months, and she really enjoyed it. It made her happy. So that's a fond one for me. This is more the way I usually do them, just the fabric on the back. This is my little Bluebird of Hope. I love this one. And I'm not sure, I haven't published this yet because I would like to do other birds and put other sentiments, charity, faith, love, peace, you know, things like that. But this has sort of a Christmas feel to the border. This is one of my favorites, and this is entirely filled with lavender. So it's so fragrant. If you have something filled with lavender, you just have to push it, press it a little bit, and it brings out all that nice aroma. I grow my own lavender for this purpose so that I can stuff my pillows. Sometimes they get a little bit, just a hint of lavender. This one's all lavender. One of my favorite things. And basically what I do is just, you know, you put them fronts together, front side of the fabric, front side of the stitching, and you sew all the way around, leaving just a little space, which you can turn it out, and then you stitch up the rest by hand. So you can see little hand stitches, and the hand stitches they're fine. You don't even notice them. And I actually saw one video of a woman who makes lavender sachets, and she likes to sort of show her hand stitching. And the reason for that is if the sachet is 10, 15 years old and you want to refresh the lavender, you can easily snip the hand stitching, dump out the old lavender, or if you've just got a regular filling and you want to put in lavender, you can very easily take out the hand stitching because it's obvious where it is, and then just stitch it back up again. And I thought that was kind of a clever idea too. Instead of disguising your hand stitching so well that nobody will ever see it, that also means that nobody will ever want to change anything. So both techniques are good. So hand stitching, if it's done well, is another decorative element. So don't think that you're not a very good hand stitcher and you'll do a sloppy job. Just sew together a pillow, and whatever stamp you put on it is your personal stamp. You know, if your hand stitching is really, really good, that's a good thing. And if it's not quite so good, it's still you. You made it. You know, there's a fingerprint on it, you know. So another pillow that I did before I put this few Christmassy things away. This is a little Noel. There you can see it has the Noel and a little bit of a holly edge and another little ornament. This I sewed to this fabric, and then I just kind of embellished it. I ripped a piece of fabric, sort of frayed the edges, put a button on there as a decoration. This ribbon trim is another decoration. This goes all the way to the back, so you know the offsetting of it is nice. You don't want it like right down the middle. It's nice if you can have 1/3, 2/3. But this, the reason why it's kind of floppy is it's filled with rice. Don't get it wet. It's dry rice. But this I use as a paperweight. And I can celebrate the season for a long time. You know, put Christmas cards underneath it. Maybe Christmas cookie recipes. I think this is a fun one, and this one will be included someday if I do a Christmas ornament sort of booklet or design. And one more that I want to show is this another one filled with lavender. This is my active pin cushion that I keep in my stitching basket, and every time I stick my needle in, it releases a little bit of lavender scent, and it's so wonderful to have in your stitching basket. This is another design that I did that I really, really like. The reason for the colors, these are kind of older 80s kind of colors, is that I wanted to use this piece of fabric. This fabric was used in my very first quilt, and I don't have the quilt anymore. The poor quilt. First it got bleached by the sun. I had it draped over a sofa, and you know, back in the olden days, we didn't have the windows that are protective, you know, and I didn't realize it was going to get bleached. The fabrics probably didn't help at that time. Maybe fabrics are made more so that they hold their color better, but this little piece of calico was in the quilt, and I'd like to remember that quilt. So I matched the colors to fit what was going to go on the back. And I use this just to keep my needle. Most stitchers use the magnetic little pin holder things. I've never had one. I would prefer to keep my needle in something that I've made. So this is what I do. I keep this in my basket. And another that I keep close by is my little biscornu. This is another unpublished pattern. I've got a few Norwegian knitting. I like to combine knitting and stitching. So a lot of these old Norwegian sweater designs I use in my cross stitch. This is one. It's a biscornu. This I designed. This actually uses some of the same motifs as this one. So I was going to publish these things kind of together, but the colors are so different. They've got different feels. This is more spring-like. I see the greens in this, and I think more of St. Patrick's Day. This is more old world America, you know, the blues and the reds. So this is one side of the biscornu. This is the other side. And if you've never seen a biscornu, it is two pieces of stitching, square pieces. They need to be the same size square. And you sew them together in such a way that it creates this 3D form. Now, some people use fabric on one side. So you've got your stitching side, and then you've got a fabric side. Some people make the reverse side sort of a plainer element, maybe a design on the corner where you can see it, but this is reversible. I use both of these sides because I like them both equally. So this is my little biscornu, and I used to use this as my needle holder. Now I use it as a true pin cushion, but I like this one too. It's the problem with stitching too many things. You like them all. They all become your favorites, and it's hard to know what to use. So it's nice to have a rotation. And what I'm working on right now, here's my basket. I said I like to use baskets. In my basket is my work in progress. This is a design that I'm working on. It's alphabets. It's a little bit of a sampler. So you've got a little bit of a border pattern, well, two border patterns thus far. And right here, right there is a little bit of black work. Black work is really fun. It gets a bad rap. But black work is backstitch in its most basic form. It's just little straight stitches, just like your backstitching motif. Back in the 80s and 90s, we used to backstitch a lot of our pieces. We would do the cross stitching, and then to really make things pop, we would backstitch them to bring out the elements. Now I think that things are more simple, they're more primitive, or they use more decorative types of floss, the overdyes, the flosses that morph from dark to light and then dark again, and that lends something to the work too. But this is what I'm working on so far. Now in my basket, like I said, I've got my needle, got my work. I use, oops, cat has just jumped up on the table, so everything is shaking. Let me try to get her down. Never an easy road with a cat in the house. This is a spring motion. I've had this forever. I don't even know. I'm sure you can get these. I don't know what the quality is. And I've looked, I can't see any writing on it to tell me manufacturer, anything like that. I've just had it forever. I've tried the Q-snaps. I've tried one of those stands that you stick under a leg, and it's got a nice hoop that you can hold in there, and I didn't like that. I just really, I'm sort of your bare bones crafter. I don't like to spend a lot of money buying things, so I only buy things if I have to. One thing that I had to buy, magnifier. So it's got this little, it's got a little area that's, I think, four times magnification. This is what I use, is this little tiny piece, and I just drape this around my neck. Sits like this, and I can look through it. I'm trying to find other solutions, but so far this works, so I go with it. This is the floss that I'm using. Just a one color, 38-38. I've got this piece, which is an older piece that I found, and I'm working that in. I'm trying to get rid of this first, and then I buy these tags at Michael's, clip out my hole. You can get punches that are the size smaller, oval, heart-shaped, you know, which makes it kind of fun. These are not very expensive, and I buy them when I have a coupon for a non-sale item, because these are never really on sale that I've seen. So that's how you stock up on things at Michael's. You wait till you have a coupon. And as you know, most things are on sale at Michael's, so the non-sale item coupons are pretty useless because everything is usually on sale. So get these. They're hardly ever on sale, and you can use your coupon. There's my floss. In my basket, I've also got a darning egg. Darning eggs will come in handy. I wear hand knit socks. So when part of your sock becomes a little bit worn or a hole forms, you need to darn them. So I've got my little darning egg in my basket. A few pens. I have this nice Sassy Jacks card that they sent me once when I placed an order. It's one of these that has the 3-inch marks, and it's very, very handy. I don't really need it. It makes it fun. It's one of those fun things. It's very, very pretty, and I like to have it in my basket. But when you're starting your stitching, it's a good idea to have a margin so you can measure 3 inches in and 3 inches down, start your work there, and then it gives you ample borders. I've been known to have a border that's like that. That's not good. So use at least a 2 or 3 inch border on your pieces. If you're finishing them yourself, it will be so much easier. And if you're sending things out to be finished, some people might not even accept them if they don't have an ample border. So using something as simple as this, it gets your 3 inches in, it gets your 2 inches in. Make sure you always measure first to make sure that you're where you need to be. You've got ample fabric. I just finished a piece not too long ago that was rectangular, and I positioned it the wrong way. So it was supposed to be wide, and I had the wide part on the narrowest piece of the fabric. Luckily, it worked out. Luckily, I was safe. In the early years of my stitching, we were always taught to start in the center, and that's why on your patterns you'll often see little arrow at the top and an arrow at the side of a pattern, and you follow them down. That's your center. And you would start in the center of your work and in the center of your fabric so that you would make sure that it all came out okay in the end. I buy these fat quarter lengths of cuts of fabric. This is color and cotton. I love color and cotton. This is a 40 count color and cotton. And I've usually got ample, but I don't want to waste it either. It's expensive. So if you can fit one large design and then several small designs on a piece of fabric, you don't want to start in the center and then waste that fabric. You would rather start in one corner. It doesn't matter which corner. I like to start in the upper left. Some people start in the lower left. Some people start in the lower right. I think a lot of people that stitch in hand like to start on the right hand side. I don't stitch in hand. And sometimes the design tells me where to start. This is a sampler. I'm just going to stitch across and down. Sometimes if you've got a large empty space, you want to start where there's a pattern. You don't want to start down where there's a few little stitches in a corner and then the whole rest of it is, you know, somewhere else. You want to stitch someplace where you can follow the design to help aid you as you're going along. Now this, you know, you start with an alphabet, and then this second row, you're kind of going off, you know, you're maybe counting 2 stitches down and, you know, 1 stitch over, something like that. Let's see, let me show you. So for this, I don't remember. I might have started with the word. I might have started right in the middle with this little tree. I might have started down here. You want to start someplace where it's easy to count up to place your next motif. Some are easier than others. This, you could start with the bird and then progress down this way and over this way and up. You wouldn't really want to start with the word. Usually words and letters, things like that, you maybe could do at the end. But you want to have some place where you can count easily and know that you're on target. Now, another thing I can say is that with something like this, if you're off a stitch or two for these little acorns, it's not gonna matter. It's gonna be okay. If you're off a stitch or two on something like this, it's gonna be very, very noticeable. So some works are labeled easier than others, and a lot of times it's because you can progress easily from one part to the next and not so much counting. If you're working on Ada, this was done in Ada. It's easier to see the little squares, the little holes. You know, it's easier to count over than, say, this piece on 40 count, and you're counting over 2 minute little threads. So keep that in mind. Ada is always going to be easier because you're not counting over 2 or over 1 thread, which is very, very fine. You're going in sort of a ready-made grid. So most beginners start with Ada. There's nothing wrong with Ada. I have a lot of Ada designs from years past. Big designs from when I used to do designs. Sometimes I would kit them up myself, meaning that I would go off to the store and buy my own DMC flosses. But some are kitted up for you. And I did a lot of those, the dimensions kits in the day. And they're absolutely lovely. And if you knew nothing about counted cross stitch, you wouldn't know that that's an easier form to work on the Ada. It's all lovely. So here's a look at some of my smalls, my basket. On this channel, I am sorry to say, you're not going to see a whole lot of whips because I tend to work one thing at a time. I'm going to keep going with this until it's done, and then I'm going to start something new. Now, the interruptions may be if I get work from a magazine, then sometimes I'll have to stop what I'm doing, stitch the work for the magazine, which I can't show. So that's what we call stealth projects. So I may have some stealth knitting projects. Actually, I do have a stealth knitting project, which I'm actually taking a break from. It's starting to hurt my hands a little bit. When you work on straight needles and you've got an awful lot of stitches on the needle, and you know they're kind of tight, my hand gets tired. And so I'm kind of taking a break. I thought I would take this opportunity to show some of my stitching, which I hope to get back to soon. So if you are interested in doing my Afghan with me, I'm starting to do a little pieced Afghan. Now, Afghans can be knit on circular needles generally, all in one piece. You just knit, 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 knit. Sometimes they've got different patterns in them. Sometimes it's all one pattern, different colors, you know, whatever you want to do. This is different. This is going to be little blocks, and we're going to sew the blocks together. So right now we're just creating the blocks, and we're creating simple stitches that are the basics of knitting. Your basic garter stitch, stockinette stitch, seed stitch, moss stitch. We're just going to do simple knit purl stitches so that if you have never knit before, you can learn to knit. If you want a refresher, you can get back into it. Now, I'm doing blocks that are size 7 inches by 9 inches, and that's in case anybody wants to donate any of their blocks to a charitable organization. That's generally the size that is wanted and accepted. I know for Warm Up America, that's the size that they use. So if you knit a few blocks and you really, really like the pattern, I'm going to teach you about gauge and computing how many stitches you'll need to get a size that you'll want. So my thought is that if you find a stitch pattern you really like and you want to make a pillow, you can make a pillow. So you might knit these blocks and never actually use them in your Afghan, but they're good beginner pieces. And then if you've got a standard size that the charity would like, you might be able to send them off someday and have them sewn into an Afghan that will then be donated to someone in need. So blocks are a handy way of learning things. And so that's why I thought I would start that way instead of a larger project, just using one stitch pattern. So the next time I come on here, I'm going to teach how to purl. And as I said previously, the knit stitch and the purl stitch are all you really need to know. The rest is built upon that foundation. And that's why you have to learn the knit stitch and the purl stitch, because that's what knitting is made of. And knitting is this sweater is one that I designed, and you can see it's an argyle pattern. This is worked in knits and purls. That's how you get this lovely effect. It's a yarn that sadly is no longer made because the business is no longer in existence, but it is a mercerized Egyptian cotton, and it's created so that your stitches pick up the light in different ways. So the knit stitches, these are knit stitches right here. Let's see, right there is a knit stitch. So it's showing up as lighter than the purl stitches, and that's how you get this nice argyle effect. So crafts are a wonderful thing, and I'm glad to be sharing some of my crafts with all of you. Wanted to also to show you, I'm leaning against a fun pillow. This is needlepoint. Needlepoint is much like counted cross stitch, but it's worked in its entirety. So whereas cross stitch, counted cross stitch, you've got some empty spots where the fabric shows. In needlepoint, you do the whole entire thing. So you are doing one stitch. You're not going back and crossing it. You're just doing this first stitch. It's called a tent stitch. In counted cross stitch, it's called a half stitch. But isn't this fun? This was a kit. This was a kit that I bought years ago, and I actually have seen counted cross stitch, not this exact design, but just like this. The woman with this beautiful coat and the sleigh, or yeah, I think I've seen pieces that look just like this, only different. It's like further on in their adventure. I like to think of them as walking in New York City in the snow in the 1880s. On the back, I've got some nice plaid for the season, and here's one of my envelope finishes. So this is fun too. Needlepoint is great. It's worked on a much heavier canvas, and historically we used to use crewel yarns. I've been doing some needlework that actually uses pearl cotton. I've started doing some needlepoint designs using pearl cotton, and that's fun. That's a nice effect too. So in a way, you can blend all these things together. You can take knitting charts, doing needlepoint, using pearl cottons. You know, it's fun to mix, and then you've got your sewing in there too. So yeah, I like to do it all. I like to take my designs from start to finish. I like to finish my own things. Just like my quilting, I prefer quilting everything. So there's a lot of quilters out there that quilt a lot of quilts. Oh, I'm a quilter. I've quilted hundreds of quilts. But in the end, all they've really done is pieced them. They've pieced the top, and somebody else has done the rest. I think the hard part of quilting is the quilting. But we'll get into that at a later time. So I've droned on enough about my counted cross stitch. I hope you'll find a small pattern somewhere and start stitching. So if you're not working on my Afghan project, but you would like to start some of these small designs, you can purchase some small designs from my site, or you can look broader. You can go to Michael's. They've got plenty of small little counted cross stitch designs and kits. So you're never too far away from starting something. So give it a look and have fun stitching. Keep an angel close to you at all times, and I'll catch you on my next episode.